crafty friends, welcome back to the attic. Pull up a chair, grab your favorite beverage, and let's spend a little bit of crafty time together. Today we're going to be putting together the Botanical Dossier for the Theodore Rowan Papers. This is one of the optional companion kits created for MystEMBER 2026, The Mystery of the Ravenholt Papers. But before we get started, I wanted to show you what we're going to be making today. This one was designed to feel like an old botanical field dossier filled with expedition papers, maps, removable field journal, specimen pockets, botanical records, and all those little papers a traveling naturalist might have tucked away during their years of field work. In the video today, I'm going to be walking you through the assembly of this lapbook structure and all of the interactive pieces step by step. If you're working with the printable kit, make sure you print all the pages at 100% and actual size. Do not use fit to page. Printers and papers can vary, so rather than worrying about exact measurements, we're going to let the printed score lines and tabs and pieces guide us through the construction. One thing I do want to mention is once I start the video for the tutorial, it might be a good idea to watch it from start to finish before you actually start working and assembling this. I will say I did do a prototype of this, but I had not actually put the mats and the closures and things on there. So I did a little bit of thinking while I was putting this together, and I changed thought a little bit. So if you watch from beginning to end, you will understand it a lot better and it will go a lot smoother. So let's open up with Theodore's field papers and start building this beautiful lapbook. Let's start out by going over a few tools that might be helpful when you're putting this lapbook or any project together. All of these are not absolutely necessary, but do sometimes make things easier. At bare minimum, you're going to need something to cut with and some kind of adhesive. I like to use two different size scissors for most of my projects, a large one and one that I can fussy cut with. I also like to have a trimmer. A scoreboard can come in handy, but not absolutely necessary. Bone folders of some kind are very helpful. And a scoring tool, either with the scoreboard or I like to use this embossing tool. And then you're going to need some kind of adhesive. Let's talk about the different types of adhesive. You can use double stick tape for most of the things. I like my ATG glider because I don't have to refill it as much, but you can use the small double stick tape runners. You can use score tape, or you can use wet adhesive. This is Barely Arts glue and a glue stick. I also use Fabri-Tac sometimes, but I'm not going to be using it during this tutorial, so I didn't grab that out. But I probably, for this tutorial, will be going back and forth between using my wet white glue, the Barely Arts glue, and my tape runner. Sometimes a combination of both. So let's get our area done there, cleaned, and let's talk about the pieces in the kit. I have tried really hard to label all the pieces in the kit to the best that I think is the easiest way to follow. So it goes A to G and then has some numbers that coordinate, showing you different things for each panel. So you've got an A panel, B panel, C panel, D panel, E panel, and F panel, and a G panel for Theodore's lapbook. I know that sounds like a lot, but stick with me. It really isn't that complicated to put this together. What I have done is I have cut out all my pieces. I have inked them up, and for this kit I am using Distress Oxide in Scorched Timber. You don't have to ink. You can use whatever ink that you prefer. And then when I cut out all my pieces, I attached the labels to those pieces so I wouldn't have to remember, okay, now that I've cut it out, what piece is this? So what I've done is I've now separated all my pieces for all my A pieces, all my B pieces, all my C pieces, and so forth and so on. Okay? Again, I labeled them and I've inked everything up. I have also pre-scored everything, but when I'm assembling this, I'll tell you when to score pieces as necessary. So I'm going to pause the video really quick, and the first thing I'm going to do is get out all my pieces that are the base pieces. The base pieces and the back mats. So let me grab those and I'll come right back. Okay, let's get started. Let me go ahead and tell you what I printed this on. I printed all my base pieces and almost everything for this kit on 80-pound paper. Anything I didn't print on 80-pound paper, I will tell you later on, but for right now, just consider everything was printed on 80-pound paper, and I did not back the pieces because each one of the base pieces, I created a mat for it. And let me go ahead and tell you about that. I've created 2 mats. One's a light version and one's a dark version for each one of these pieces. You do not need to print both C mats. You just need to print one. You can mix and match. You can use some light pieces, some dark pieces, all dark, all light, whatever is your preference. I wanted people to have options. A lot of people do not like to print really dark images. This is what I'm going to be using. As you can tell, this is what I've cut out. So I wanted to give everybody a light option also. But for now, I'm going to set the mats aside. We don't need those just yet. And let's talk about the main base pieces. I've got A, B, and C here. I have gone ahead and inked all of these up. Again, I am using the Scorched Timber, and I went ahead and pre-scored all my fold lines, and I inked up the backs because when I put my mats on here, they may not go all the way to the edge, so that's why I wanted to ink those up. Again, personal preference. You don't have to ink if you don't want to. And we're going to start assembling A all the way to G. So, we've got our A, our B, and our C. And all of your printed images are going to be facing you. Okay? Our B is our spine, and we're going to put glue on each one of these hinges. Let's start one at a time. And for this, I am going to be using my wet glue. I didn't clean my bottle off, so hopefully it's not clogged up. And you just want to get enough glue on here to hold that in place. I am a heavy gluer. I know that is controversial. I do make a mess with it a lot, but that's okay. Now, you want to put your A piece on your left side of your B spine. And what I normally try to do is I will line up one corner, because you don't want to go over that score line. You just want to go right up to it. And then get my piece all lined up before I burnish it down. And then once I get it lined up, I'll go ahead and burnish that down. And I like to use wet glue for this because it does give me a little bit of wiggle room in case I don't get it completely down in the right place. Then we can flip this over. Just make sure we have that all glued down. Don't have glue on our mat. And now we're going to glue the right side hinge of the B spine to the C panel, the left side of C. And I didn't mention this before, but do, before you put glue on there, dry fit. And what I mean by that is check your line up without anything on there, without any double stick tape, without any glue, anything. Just make sure you know where it's going to line up and make sure your edges are equal, because everybody's printer's different. Everybody cuts a little different. Sometimes I don't cut a straight line and I need to adjust that. And the best time to do that is before you put your glue on. So that fits well. So we're going to go ahead and put our glue on this hinge. Again, I'm going to line that corner up. Get that top corner lined up. And then just burnish it in place. And that's where I use a lot of glue. So if you didn't use as much glue as I did, you probably wouldn't have any coming out. That's why I always keep a little rag next to me so that I can get that up as necessary. Okay. So now we've got A, B, and C put together. Okay. If you want to, you can go ahead and clip these back on, because you will need to know what panels they are as you're putting your pockets and things on. But if you think of it like the ABCs going left to right, it's going to be A, B, C, D, and so forth and so on. So I'm not going to do that, even though I just did it. Let's take them back off. It's not necessary. But if you think it is, you can. Okay, I'm going to slide this over, and we're going to grab our D spine. So we've got A, B, C, and now D. And we're going to glue D onto C just like we did over here. Again, this is already pre-scored and pre-inked, so all we've got to do is add our glue. I got a little bit of glue on my mat there. Just get that up so I don't end up with a mess. And I will tell you, I like to work left to right. So I'm going to move, just flip that over. You don't have to. Just keep in mind that if you did flip it over, I just like to be able to see those corners really well. So the closer they are to me, the easier it is. Just burnish that in place. So we've got A, B, C, and D. Our backs are looking good. Everything's folding, and I like to keep checking that to make sure everything folds well as I'm going. That way, if I need to make any adjustments, I can do that before I get too far into the project. So A, B, C, D. So now we need E. We're going to glue E onto the right side of D. Line that corner up. And if you don't get it perfectly straight, that's okay. The biggest thing is don't go over your score line, because that will keep it from opening and closing well. Let's get that done. Check to make sure I don't have extra glue. And we keep going. So now we need another spine. So E, now we have F. F is our next spine. There's not a top and bottom to these spines. The hinges are exactly the same size, so don't worry about that part. So we're going to get the glue on here for F. And let's see if I can do this without flipping it over. Get that corner. Line that up. There's where I'm talking about. It's just easier for me if it's facing me, but it can be done. Whatever is more comfortable for you. Go ahead and burnish that in place. And so we've got A, B, C, D, E, and F. And I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but I want to make this as beginner friendly as possible. So if you got the understanding and you know what is going on, you can fast forward through this part until we get to the pockets. But now we're going to use G. And this is our last base panel for the folio. I'm going to get that lined up. And we're going to get it burnished down. And get our extra glue up. And depending upon what kind of glue you're using, and you know your glue better than I do, you know the dry time of your glue. If your glue takes longer to dry than mine, you might want to pause at this step and wait before you go on and make sure this is completely dry. Alright, so what I want to do now is I want to flip this over, and now it's backwards. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And if you want to take a pencil and mark these, you can, because you won't be seeing them once you get your mats on. So B, C, D, E, F, and G. Alright, the next thing I want to do is I want to know this is my top, this is my bottom. So, top, 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 top. The mats themselves, I don't think they're directional, but you may see something in the image that's directional in your mind, so just make sure that you've got the top, you know which is the top of the inside when you're putting your mats on. So let's grab our mats. And again, I don't need this light one. If you're using light, they are exactly the same. They just are a little lighter. And I am going to start with G and work my way back to A. So let's put these over here. And this is where I'm going to use my tape runner, just because I don't want a lot of extra glue on here, but I want to make sure it's attached well. So this is my G. I'm going to go ahead and dry fit this, just so I can make sure that this is inked up the way I want it inked up. And if it's not, I can add a little bit, and I'm going to. See how my hinge right there is not quite as dark as I wanted it to be? So I'm going to go ahead and ink that up some more. Let's go ahead and ink that up just a little. Check that again. Alright, I like how that is. So I'm going to go ahead and add my tape to this and my glue. And the way I normally do this is for my tape, I normally do a large crisscross and then go the opposite direction to where I'm forming basically kind of like a little star pattern there with my tape. And then I add the glue to the edge. And I will tell you again that there is no one way to do anything. If you followed any other tutorials and you mat a different way, that is completely completely all right. You do whatever works for you. This is just what works the best for me. And as long as you're putting the right panel on the right mat on the right panel, you're okay. So again, don't go over that score line. And I like to try to just get that around the edges before I press in the middle, because remember the middle is where I've got that tape. So the tape is going to stick down pretty quickly while the glue is going to give me a little bit of wiggle room. So, and then you can always come back if you want to ink these edges a little bit more, you can. Okay. And so we've got G, and we're working backwards, so the next is F. F is our spine piece, and there is a mat for F. It's going to work right in there like that. And again, I didn't make them necessarily directional, but take a look at it, see what you like. And I'm probably going to come back and ink this some more, just because I like my edges pretty dark. But I was doing this pretty quick, and I wanted you to be able to see the score lines, so I didn't want to ink it so dark that everything was super dark and you not be able to see those score lines. So let's get that in. And now we've got the mat for F. And let's move on to E. Grab my E mat. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with my tape runner. Let's dry fit it really quick, just to be sure this is the way I want it. It is. I'm going to ink that just a little bit more. Alright. You can completely use wet glue. You can use score tape, whatever's best for you. Again, you do you when it comes to adhesive. I know different areas, some adhesive works better than others, depending on what your humidity level is. So we've got all our mats on now except for A. Opens up like this, closes like this, and it'll close just like that. And our closures are going to go here and here. So let's go ahead and do our final piece here for A. Because I want to put some closure brads just for decoration on those two pieces, but they can go on these pieces before I glue those pieces down to hide the brad prongs. I was thinking I needed to hide them under the mats, but I do not. So now our whole base is all put together. We have the whole base for Theodore's Lapbook. You have your flap A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Okay, and it closes up just like that. Our closure pieces are going to be this little leather strap, and it's going to go on here, and that strap is going to go under here. And what I want to do is I want to add some brads to this before I put it in, almost like these have been kind of riveted in place. And I could have done that and made it go through the mat and glued the mat on, but that's just an extra step and I don't think it's absolutely necessary, because I'm going to glue this right up to about here to where it folds, so we'll have plenty of glue here holding that in. Let me grab my brads really quick. For my brads, I just want them to be decorative. Like I said, I'm going to put 3 right here, and then I'm going to put 1 in each one of the corners here. So I am going to go ahead and just poke my holes. I'm using a piece of foam so that I don't poke holes through my table. And you could measure this if you want to measure it. I'm going to turn this so I can see. I do want it to be fairly straight. And I got it pretty close to the edge. And I'm using these little decorative square brads. But you can use no brads. You can use regular brads. Whatever you want to use to make your lapbook the way you want it to look. And get those flattened down. I want to get those flattened down pretty well because I don't want them to interfere with the glue process. Again, these are just kind of more or less for decor than serving a purpose of holding this in place. And I want to bend these prongs in just a little bit. These prongs are pretty long. I don't want them sticking out of the strap. Alright, so that is ready to go right here. And I am going to glue that right there. And again, I'm probably going to put glue right up to about right here. But before I do that, I did say I wanted to come back and ink these a little bit more. They're not quite dark enough for me. You could also, instead of brads, a couple of options for decor here. Is once you've got this glued on, you could come back with another little piece of like ribbon trim or cordage or something and glue there. That would add some decor there. That would probably look really well. So I want to add my glue to about right there. So I'm going to just flip that over. And I did ink this up because you will be able to see part of that. And I want to make sure I've got plenty of glue here. I'll just get the extra off. And again, I'm going to kind of just eyeball this. I want to go right above where that little botanical element is. And get that all burnished into place. Try not to move that as much as possible while that is drying. Alright, but I do need to have it so that I know where this piece goes. But that can be drying while I put the brads in for this. Again, I'm going to put 1 in each corner. And for this one, I'm going to use some tape over these little prongs just so my strap doesn't get caught in these brads when it goes in and out. Let's see. Turn this around so my prongs fold out the correct way. A little fiddly sometimes, but work with them. And if you don't have brads, skip this part. Just glue these pieces down. But you will need to make sure you're not gluing the area where the strap will go underneath. And if you want a different closure, you don't even have to use this kind of closure. You could use a policy closure. I've got a couple of those in the kit. You could use that as your closure option. And then this is going to get glued right there. Okay? Probably going to glue it right about, move this over so you can see it a little better. Probably going to glue it right about there. And again, I said I was going to add a little bit of tape, and I'll come back and trim that tape up. Let's go ahead and just get these covered, just so our strap does not catch those brads. And for Theodore's Lapbook, if you want this to be more distressed, take a little bit of sandpaper to this and distress it up if you wanted to. Alright, we're going to add our glue right there. Alright, for this I'm actually going to use a little bit of glossy accents. And that's because I put this tape here. I want to make sure that slick surface is going to adhere well. And my glossy accents always clogs up no matter what I do. So let's get this opened up. Make sure. Yeah. Okay. You could use E6000 here. Anything to just make sure whatever your glue you're using will work with a kind of slick, shiny surface if you put this tape down. The can't think. The Barely Arts may work fine. I actually never tried it. If you've tried it and it works well, drop me a comment down in the comment section and let me know that that worked well for you before. So that's going to be our closure. And I'm going to pause here, let that dry, then we're going to come back and start working on putting our pockets on our panels. I am going to put this together exactly the way I designed it. In the kit, all the pockets and cards are labeled how I designed it. Like if it was designed for E panel, it's labeled E. And 1, 2, whatever number it is. If it was designed for the C panel, it's labeled that way. But most of these things can be mixed and matched. The C, E, and G panels are fairly the same size, so you can kind of mix and match these pockets a little bit. Definitely can mix and match where you put the cards. So you do not have to follow this tutorial exactly like I'm doing it if you want yours to be different. So let's let this dry. We'll come back. We'll put our pockets in. Now we're ready to start putting our flaps and pockets on. And I've separated these because your flaps and pockets will be C's, E's, and G's. There's nothing on A, and then there's nothing on the spines because that's given us the room to allow for the growth of these pockets. A couple of things I want to mention here. The way I'm doing it I am not backing any of these with extra paper. You could run this through your printer before you cut these out and put one of the backing pages on there and not have to mat anything. I'm either choosing to mat, or I'm going to be doing some distressing with inks or mixed media or something later on down the road to decorate a lot of these flaps. But if you didn't want to do that, again, before you cut out all the pockets or flaps, run it back through your printer with using one of the backing papers, or you could back it with some tea-dyed paper, anything like that. That is a complete personal preference. That way you turn this project into your style. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to start with the C's. So I'm going to move the rest of these out of the way. And I left my cards over there so that they're not in the way. I'm going to make sure I've got plenty of room here. Try not to have a craft-a-lanch. Let's get this back open. And remember, this is A, B, and so this is C. So we're going to be working on this panel. I'm going to keep the rest of this closed for right now, because this is a pretty big lapbook if it's completely open. So let's talk about what we've got here. We've got C5, C3, 4, 2, and 1. Okay, again, I have already pre-scored everything. So I've pre-scored and inked everything here. I've inked the backs. Same with these, okay? And I'm going to start with these two pieces here. And C1 is going to go as a bottom flap, like that, okay? C2 is going to go as a small top flap, like that. And I am going to put a policy closure here to keep this closed. That is one of the reasons I chose not to double print this, is because I want to put mats that will cover my brads for my policy closures. So I will do that once I've got these in place, because I want to make sure I've got them where I want them, and I can use my foam to go underneath it, and I think it'll be fine. So let's start with C1. And you've got your glue hinge, and then you've got a little 1/4 inch gusset. Okay, so what you're going to do is just fold that to where you're just working with the glue hinge for right now, okay? Because that's going to go right like that, okay? And I designed these to where you've got a little play. It doesn't go up to the edges here, so you don't have to worry about that. If you go a little bit to the left or a little to the right, it's fine. You'll still have plenty of room. So I'm going to go ahead and put my glue on this glue mat. I don't know why I keep saying mat, it's a hinge. Sorry about that. Sometimes terminology gets the better of me. Alright, but I am going to try to get this about 1/4 inch from the bottom, and I'm going to try to center it pretty well. Doesn't have to be completely centered. You may not want it centered at all, but that's what I'm going for right now. So that's that. Then it opens back up, and you've got a hinge here. And there's a couple of things you can do to cover these hinges. You can come back with cards, mats, washi tape, anything to cover the hinge. You can only use ink and just make it to where it's not so noticeable. It is, again, a personal preference of however you want your book. Okay, for right now, I'm not going to do any extra decorations to these. I am just going to show you the basic way of putting these folios together. And then as the story progresses, I will be putting more decoration to my lap books, and you can see how I'm designing it if you want to do it the same way I'm doing it, or feel free to go ahead and do things your own way. I love to see what everyone's doing, so if you're in my Facebook group, be sure and put some pictures in the Facebook group and let me see what you're creating there. And I'm gonna just line that up like that, just to make sure everything's fitting the way I want to. Again, dry fitting to me is really important when you're putting things together like this. So let's go ahead and get this glued on. I'm going to get it about where I want it and as straight as I can get it. And then open this up. Make sure that's straight. And then burnish that down. And so that's our little folio pocket for C2 and C1. And I am going to go ahead and put my policy closures on now before I go into putting other pockets on, just so that I'll know where I want those. And I've got policy closures in the kit. And I want mine to be, let's grab my weight really quick. Where's that? Just hold that down there. I think that's where I want those. And then there's a couple of ways you can do this. I've got little decorative elements you can put on here. You can use just brads. You can do whatever you want to. I'm going to use what looks like a little compass and a brad. And I want to go ahead and glue two of these policy closures together to make them a little more sturdy. So let's do that. They can be drying. And I'm going to add this to the center, and then I'm going to take my brad right through all three of those. And then I can add the string and stuff later. I'm not going to do that now. I'll show you how to do that later on. I am going to go ahead and ink these up just a little bit. I didn't quite get that lined up super well. That's why I think I like inking so much. It makes things so forgivable. And let me grab my brads really quick. I am going to use some smaller brads this time. I just want regular brass ones, I think, for this. Grab two. And I'm going to do this one first. I'm going to slide my foam right underneath there. And take the paper piercer here, and I'm gonna pierce right through that. Add my brad. And this lap book being so big, I apologize. I'm having to move things around a lot for it to show up on camera. So bear with me with these moving of things. And then I'm just going to flatten that down. And I'm going to put a little piece of tape right over that, just so things don't get hung there. So that's one. So let's go back. I'm going to move my foam piece right up there. And then let's get that where I want it. And get my piercing tool. I think, do I want it down a little bit? No, I think I want it up. Alright, I'm going to put it right there. Right there in the center. Lost my brad when I moved everything around. There it is. Get this in. This one all done. Alright, so that is our flaps for our 2 panels here. And you will see I didn't have my foam down there very well. So I actually pierced that piece instead of having it out of the way, but that's okay. I can come back, add some decoration right there, some Tim Holtz transparency tape, and it'll look like it's part of the decor. So if you make a mistake like that, don't stress about it. It happens to everybody, and you can always fix it. So I'm just going to ink this up for right now, and we're going to move on. I am going to mat these with some of my backing paper. I'm going to mat this one with my map. I'm not going to do that on camera. It is very simple. Cut your mat to fit your page just like these mats did. So I'm not going to do that on camera. I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit. I know this tutorial is probably going to end up being pretty long because there's a lot of pieces that go on here. So let's move on. The next piece I'm going to put in is C3, and this is a pocket, and it's going to fit right here. And you can use this to cover up part of this flap if you want to. You can go ahead and put some washi tape here if you want to cover up some of that flap. Again, this is the time you want to be thinking about what you're doing before you do the next step. I'm probably just going to put a little bit of washi tape right here in just a dark one. If I can get this. Here it goes. Going the wrong way. Just because I know this isn't going to completely cover this up, I want to just add a little bit to where this looks like Theodore really used this book. And it went through the field with him, so he's had to put some tape to keep it together. Okay, so my pocket's going to go here. Let me talk about how I designed these pockets. I tried to make this kit as easy as possible to cut out and stuff, so a lot of times, and not waste a lot of paper. So a lot of times I was butting up pockets or flaps right up next to each other. So keeping the corners square was the easiest way to do that. But you don't need all this bulk when you're doing your pockets. It just kind of gets in the way and makes your projects a little bulky. So let me show you what you want to do here. You want to miter these corners, and to do that you basically want to cut from one flap to the other right across that cross line there. What I like to do is line my scissors up to where I know I'm going right to that corner. I'll go there, and then I'll pivot just a little bit and make my cut. So let me show you that again. I'll line that up, go all the way to the corner, pivot just a little bit, and cut. Okay, and that gives me a pretty mitered corner, because what you want is it to not overlap. You can kind of check it. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit of a gap, that's okay, but if it overlaps, it just makes your project really bulky. This is also a good idea of if you ever wanted to make a pocket. Cut out a square, score for your hinges, and these are 1/2 inch hinges, and so you would just score for your hinges, and then you can miter those corners yourself, and you've made yourself a pocket out of any kind of paper. And for my top, just because sometimes I don't like that white to show, I miter those two, and I'll just come right in here and do the same thing and just miter those corners, and then you don't see them as much. You just get a little bit of ink there, and so this is your pocket C3, and it's going to go right here. Again, you can mix and match. This is where I'm putting my pocket. But if you don't follow what I'm doing, do kind of plan out what you're doing before you start gluing things down. That way you don't end up getting halfway through and thinking, oh goodness, I should have done that differently. So let's just get that lined up. And don't go over that score line there, otherwise your flap there will not close. And we're going to burnish that down, and I'm going to show you something else I like to do with my projects. When I've got pockets, I like to put a little piece of cellophane tape right on that bottom flap. Once I've got it glued, this is not for adhesion. It's not because I don't think my glue's gonna work. It is just to get rid of that little lip right there, that when you're putting things in and out of your pockets, it gets caught on that, and that little cellophane tape will help keep that from happening. So let's see if I can move this up a little bit, and we're gonna add glue and get this on. That burnished down. Okay. Our next pocket that we're going to do is C4, and that's going to go right here, and I've already mitered those corners. And I think I want a little notch right here. So I'm going to take, before I get this glued in, I'm going to take my little punch, that's the notch, and just punch that. And we're going to get this one glued in. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add this here, and this time I think I want to go over and I want to line this up with that line there, and I want to come down just a little bit right there, I think. Again, there's no perfect place for this. This is just where I designed the pocket to go. A little bit of tape. And for some reason, those do not feel burnished really well, so I'm going to burnish those down just a little bit more. And let's see if I can, I'm going to scoot my camera back out just a little bit. See if that makes it a little easier to see things. And we're about to have a storm. And my dog does not like storms. So I might have to pause this video and go check on him and come back. There is my C4. Okay. So we've got our flap with our policy closure here for our C5. And I've already inked all this up. I've mitered my corners. And if you will do that in advance, often these things will go together pretty quickly from that point. My dog has come in here to visit, so I think that means the storm's starting to freak him out just a little bit. So if he starts getting wiggly, I may have to pause again. He's also opened the door, which means Mr. Kitty might come in and start being vocal. So I will apologize in advance if any of that happens. Alright, I'm liking how this is coming together. And so that is pretty much everything for our C panel, except putting the little cord around for our policy closure. And to be honest, while we're here, let's just go ahead and do that. I am just taking some twine I had on my desk because I was already planning on using that, and making sure I've got plenty to go under here and tie, because I can always cut this off and go ahead and tie that in a knot. And we can cut the extra that we don't need. And then this becomes our policy closure. You can have as much or as little of this as you want. I'm gonna probably leave it about right there for right now. So now we've got our policy closure all done. So that is panel C. All done, all taken care of. So let's move on to panel E. Okay, for E, we've got a pocket that we're going to put a field journal in. And this little field journal, I'm not going to put that together on camera, but because it's basically, you're going to put this together just like you would a signature. So bind that however you want to, be it accordion style, 3-hole pamphlet stitch, however you want to, but this is going to be your little field journal that's going to fit in a pocket right here. So let's start with that pocket, which is pocket E1. Let me grab those. Alright, we'll put all our E's here for a minute. And then put our G's back over here. We don't need those right now. So we've got pocket E1. I've already mitered those corners, and that's going to go right here. We're going to just attach that like we have all the other pockets. And I do want to, again, put this one pretty close to the bottom, just so that that field journal fits inside. And didn't get that centered. Oh, there I go. I like that. All right. Add some more tape. And our glue for the sides of our pockets. And I hope this is in frame. And when I was designing this, keeping it in frame on camera was not on my radar. So that's that pocket there, and that's what our field journal is going to fit in. It's going to go just like this. So keep that in mind, that your field journal is going to go in here. So you don't want this too thick. Probably a few pages of that signature, and you've got lots of pages to choose from. You can use those other pages for something different, for decor, whatever you want to do, but that's where that field journal is going to go. And so that's E1. E2 are some specimen slides. Okay. The first thing I want to do here is I want to ink up the backs of these specimen slides really quick, because I've got cards that'll fit in there, but when the cards aren't in there, I don't want you to be able to see that. So I'm going to ink that up really quick. That's what you want it to look like when it's closed, and that works for me. So let's move that over. And I'm going to attach these right here diagonally. So let's go ahead and close these up. Make sure I can still put things in it. Make sure I didn't get too much glue in there. Okay. Same thing on this side. Let's get that put in. Again, check that. Make sure I didn't get extra glue. We're good there. So let's go ahead and glue this down. Don't glue that flap. We're just going to glue this back. That way we can make our cards come in and out. So I'm going to put one right here. And the second one kind of at a diagonal. Right here. So for our E, this is what we've got so far. We've got our two specimen slides, and we've got our pocket for our field journal, and then we've got a E3 that's a little pocket that can go right here. So let's get that glued on. I am going to layer this to where you see a little bit of that image there and a little bit of the label. Tape. And glue. And that is our E3. So we've got C and E done. Let's move on to G. We are getting there. This is the last panel. Now, for G, there is some pockets, and there's also a large flap that goes right here. Okay, just like that. And there's also something that you're going to need to mat here. I'm going to go ahead and mat this first before I attach this, just because I think it's going to be easier to show you on camera what I'm doing. All right, and I am going to put my flap right here, and I'm probably going to come in just a little bit because I want it to flap kind of like that, right? And I will that, right? And then for this, I am going to ink this, and then I'm going to come back over this with some washi tape. And I've got some that's got this really strange type writing on it that I think will look good with the idea of this. It is a little fiddly tape because since it's kind of torn and it's not all one thickness. I think I like that. I'm probably going to add a little bit of glue because I've been using this. There we go. I think that's good. Let me grab my scissors here. And that's where I had torn it from previous use. We're really getting a storm now. Let's just burnish that down. I'm gonna add a little bit of glue right here so that that stays down. There we go. I like that. Burnish it. And I'm gonna trim this off. You could add a strip of paper here if you didn't have washi, a strip of torn background paper, anything to just cover up that hinge and make it look more intentional so that you don't see that white hinge. Alright, I am liking how this is coming out. Alright, okay, so now we've got our G1, which is our flap on. So now we're going to go on to our G2 pieces. And for that, you've got two pieces here. We've got G2A and G2B. And they are going to be flaps that go this direction. G2A will flip up and G2B will flip down. Again, I've already pre-scored these. And they will go just like this. I'm not going to mat these yet. Again, this is going to be another policy closure. I want to just dry fit this really quick just to make sure I know where all my stuff is. G4 is going to go right here. And since I did that washi tape, I want to see where I want to put these. Originally it was going to go all the way over, but I don't know. Yeah, because you can still see that when I open it up. Never mind. Pay no attention to my thoughts. Pay attention to what I end up doing. Right? Yeah. Okay, these are how this is going to lay out. You got G2A, G2B, and then G4. G3 is going to go over here. So let's put that over here for a minute. And I actually said I was going to do these with policy closures. I think I'm changing my mind. I don't have pockets for these yet, but I think I'm going to make pockets for these. I think I'm going to make a pocket down here that then a card will fit in, and the card will be large enough to where it will go over and keep both of these down, if that makes sense. I don't think I want to repeat a policy closure. There are plenty of policy closures here. You can make this a policy closure flaps if you want to. Do it just like we did the other one. Make sure you're putting the policy closure on and your brad on before you mat if you're using brads. The other way to do the policy closure, if you didn't want to use a brad, is to just glue right in the center. Don't glue the whole circle down. Just glue right in the center. Put that down, let it dry really good, and then you wouldn't have to worry about covering up something on the other side. I hope that makes sense. If it didn't, drop any questions down in the comments you might have. I want to go ahead and glue this down, and I think I'm going to glue that one right there. Try to get that as straight as I can. And then that one will butt up right there. Yeah, I like that. Let's get that burnished down. Alright, so that's going to go there. I'm going to put my scissors right there to weight that down, just so I can get this lined up as I'm gluing this one on. So I'm going to line that up like that, and get that bottom glued down. I don't think I cut this super straight, but that's okay. Again, it is handmade. If it's not completely straight, that's okay. So our pieces are going to go like that. So this flips up, that flips down, and something can be underneath here. I probably will put an image of some sort under here to cover up these flaps, but I will do that at a later date. So let's go ahead and put in G4. I have mitered the corners already, inked everything up. Let's get this one glued in. You could make this to where you had a card here that kept these closed. That's a thought. Instead of a pocket here. That may be something I end up doing. If I don't want to put another pocket here. I just don't think I want to repeat that policy closure at this point. And again, that's a personal thing. That's where designing your projects to fit what you want them to look like makes each one unique. You do not have to do it exactly the way I'm doing it. Let's get this glued. So now let's go on to G3, which is going to go right here, and that's this envelope here. And I designed this one to where this flap will be much like the specimen card flap. It's going to fold down and just be up like that. So that's why I inked that. I have this. Let's go ahead and get this glued down. And you can pretty much put this one wherever you want on this back panel. And that looks good to me. Because nothing else is going to go on this panel. Let's get the glue on the side wings here. That's G3, and we've got one more piece, G5, and all our pieces will be in. G5 is going to go on the back here. and I am going to put it right, let's see, right there. I think I want it right there. I already mitered the corners. Get rid of the paper clip and the labels, and you know the drill. Glue, burnish, tape, whoop, not seals, don't need seals, and glue those wings. Alright, that is the final piece for Theodore Rowan's Lapbook. So let's put this glue up, move this over, and take a look at what we've got, and then I'll show you some of the cards and where I designed them to go. So let's take a look at what we've got. So here's Theodore's book. We've made our little closure. Opens up like that. And, you know, I think the more I think about this now, I think I'm going to go ahead and glue that just a little bit more. I think that's flapping just a little too much. I don't think I need that much play. So that can be drying while we look at everything else. Alright, opens up like this. We've got C. So let's go ahead and open our C flaps here and take a look at what cards I've got to go in these sections. And this was C1, C2, C3, C4. So, and C5. So C5, C3, and I said that wrong. This is C3. These are going here. And these are C4. Okay. So let's take a look at what we've got for C4 and how they'll go in. And again, these cards can be mixed and matched. You do not have to put them all in the pockets like I am. This is just a basic idea of my thoughts when I was creating Theodore. Okay, then we've got C3. That, and then see if you can see C5 down here. Those like that, and then they'll close up. Close the policy closure back. Get rid of all our paper clips and labels. And let's move on to E. E, our main piece here is that small field journal, and again I will put that together later on. That's going to go in this main pocket here. For our E2, we've got some cards and we've got fronts and backs. These flowers or ferns or roots or whatever are our fronts, and then the labels are the backs. I'm going to go ahead and glue these together real quick. And there should be 2 for each specimen slide. And I'll probably come back later and add like little pull tabs to these. But for now, I just wanted to show y'all how this went in and how everything went together. So our cards will go in like this. And you can put 2 in one slide. Like that. And then we've got our field journal, which is here. And I don't think I made anything for that one, but there are lots of tags and things that can go in that. I didn't make anything specific for that one. That's okay. So let's go over here. And for G, let's see what we've got. We've got G5 was the back, G4, and G3. These can go in here just like this. This is where I was talking about you could put some cards here that would hold that in place. And I may end up making a bigger card to hold that to where it sticks out like that to hold those closed. Actually, that would work just like that. You don't actually have to make it, just don't push it all the way in. And that like that. Just stick that one there. Again, I'm mixing and matching at this point. It might not be exactly the label I had on them, but that works. I like that. I like the way that closes. I do think I am probably going to make a bigger card with some kind of backing material, or even some of my field note sheets to where it was folded, like maybe like this. You get the idea, to where that holds that closed. Alright, so that closes there, and then our last ones go in here. But again, this is just an idea. This is not the final way this will all be set up for mine, and I'm sure it's not the final way that it'll all be set up for yours. As we go through the story and learn more about Theodore, you feel free to make this your version of Theodore. If you don't like Theodore, you make it your version of whoever you want your story to be about. But our Lapbook then closes just like that, goes back in like that. And there we have it, Theodore Rowan's Botanical Dossier, all assembled and ready to be filled and finished decorating. Once the structure is together, this is where you can really make it your own. Add those field records, the specimen papers, stamping, inking, tags, ephemera, wherever they feel right to you. You don't have to arrange yours exactly like I do mine. I will be decorating this more as the story progresses throughout September. But I really wanted Theodore's Lapbook to feel like something that had traveled with him, been opened and closed countless times, and slowly filled with those observations and discoveries of a lifetime in the field. And of course, this is only one part of the world we're going to be exploring during the mystery of the Ravenholt Papers. Theodore is one part, and Matilda is our second character in this story. So if you have bought the bundle for this companion kit, Matilda's assembly video will be out on Thursday, so be on the lookout for that. And we will start on September 2nd with the complete story following our two professors, Professor Thistlewick Fernscribe, and Dr. Belladonna Hollicraft as we unfold the mystery of the Ravenholt Papers. So thank you so much for spending this crafty time with me today. Be sure to hit the subscription button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of the videos. And until next time, y'all take care.